Hello, my name is Orla. Welcome to my channel. In this channel I read short stories for children and adults who are interested in them. In today's video I'll be reading a story from this book, Girls Who Slay Monsters, written by Ellen Ryan, illustrated by Shona Shirley MacDonald. Okay. And the first story I'll be reading is about a girl called Blathnat. This girl, an Irish goddess, and it's called Blathnat Jailbreaker. So settle down, get cozy, and let's begin. Blathnat, known for her keen amber eyes and whip-smart mind, helped her father rule the Manx people on the mystical Isle of Man. It was a mortal country where cushag flowers bloomed golden on the hills and glistening sea stallions galloped under the waves. Blathnat's father often travelled to meet with other ruling gods, so he left his daughter in charge of the isle, and she took her duties very seriously. When animal meat was sparse in wintertime, she taught mortals to make ground clover cake, a tough but tasty brack that stayed fresh to eat for months on end. And if they needed medicine, she showed them how to use cushag in healing spells. But much as she enjoyed all this problem solving, she hoped her father would never permanently hand her the throne. This was because Blathnat had a shameful secret. Unlike all goddesses her age, she had never developed a super skill. Her father had the power to control the sea. With a wave of his hand, the ocean would drag attackers out to the seabed, but she was powerless to defend the island. Then one night, while her father was away, her worst fears came true. She woke to the sound of battle and her soldiers' cries. "Raiders!" the soldiers screamed. "Raiders have breached the castle gates." Still in her nightgown, Blathnat bolted from her turret bedroom and lifted a sword from its mount on the wall, raced down the winding stairs. But as soon as the goddess saw the raiders, she knew a sword wouldn't be enough. For their leader was Q Roy, hound of the battlefield. He was an evil sorcerer, famed across Celtic lands for his dark magic. Blathnat watched in horror as he bellowed out a spell that sent her soldiers spinning downwards into the ground, until only their heads and shoulders were visible above the dirt. They were trapped in the earth like a bunch of helpless turnips. Everything was happening so fast. Her brain was usually sharp and full of ideas, but now she was seized with fear. Q Roy spotted her and flashed a toothless smile. "I wonder," he said with a sneer, "what your father would pay to see you safely returned to him." Blathnat tried to run, but she was caught and held by several of his men. However, the youngest rider among them begged Q Roy to leave her alone. "She must be very powerful like her father," the fearful boy pleaded. "You will anger the gods if you kidnap this girl. They will punish us if you take her. I'm sure of it." The evil sorcerer wasn't afraid of anyone. He ignored the boy's warning and had Blathnat tied up on the back of his horse. As the raiders led her down to the sea, many of the Manx people came out of their homes to help. They were no match for Q Roy and his army, but they called out to their goddess, "Use your power! Summon the waves to wash away these enemies." But Blathnat couldn't bear to meet them in the eyes. She felt helpless and gripped with shame as she passed them. Blathnat's captors loaded her onto their ship like cargo. They sailed to Ireland's County Kerry and made the steep trek up Caherconny Mountain, scaling an icy path across sheer snow-covered cliffs. Finally they reached Curai's dark stone fort, where 100 soldiers guarded sky-high walls to stop anyone breaking in or out. But by now Blathnat had gained plenty of time to think and to problem solve. She had a plan. As the raiders led her to a tiny chamber at the rear of the fort, she caught the eye of the boy who had begged to leave her behind. He followed as his fellow soldiers locked the goddess in her room. Once everyone else had left, Blathnat called him and whispered through the keyhole, "You know who my father is, don't you, boy? When he hears what has happened to me, he will drown your army with the flick of his wrist. Curai and all his men will die, but if I can spare you, on one condition." "I'll do anything, mighty goddess," the boy answered from the other side of the door, his legs shaking in fear. "Send word to the young demigod Cuchulainn. He's a hero in training who knows my family and lives in these lands. Tell him to hide nearby and wait for a signal to help me escape. If I return home before father discovers I'm missing, I promise you will live." With that, the boy ran away as fast as he could to deliver her message. The first part of her plan was now in place, but Blathnat knew that even a demigod couldn't storm this fort with so many soldiers on watch. So the next day she asked to speak to Curai. Down in his meeting rooms in front of all his men, she loudly teased him. "I wouldn't have thought a mighty sorcerer like you would have had a bigger fort. My castle on the Isle of Man is twice the size of yours." Furious, Curai banished the goddess back to her chamber. But when Blathnat looked out of her window, she saw the sorcerer send his soldiers away. He ordered them to gather as many stones as they could find. He would build and extend his fort and double it in size. With most of his army now absent, the second part of Blathnat's plan was in place. Next, the goddess considered how to signal Cuchulainn. She noticed a little stream running through Curai's grounds and carefully observed how it flowed under the wall of the fortress. Just then, there was a knock on her door. The boy had returned with news that Cuchulainn was waiting in a nearby valley. So, taking a pin from her hair, she picked the lock of her chamber door and escaped down the stream. Go Blathnat. Near the water's edge, she met a farmhand who was struggling to push a large barrel of milk up to the castle kitchens. The goddess offered to help, but when she took hold of the barrel, she pushed it hard against the ground, smashing it into smithereens. The barrel's entire milky contents spilled into the stream and flowed out to the nearby valley. When Cuchulainn and his men saw the strange white water, they knew this was the sign. They broke into the fort, quickly overcoming the few guards left to defend the castle. Blathnat asked her young raider friend to lead them to Curoy's private chamber. The sorcerer was so shocked when they burst in on him that he had no time to cast a spell. Cuchulainn threw him out the window and Curoy disappeared out of sight. He was gone. Blathnat was triumphant. She may not have had her father's magic powers, but her courage and intelligence had outwitted the evil enemy. She was proud of herself and felt a newfound confidence. But she still wasn't free. The soldiers had returned from their stone-gathering mission, and finding the fort under attack, they rushed towards Cuchulainn. The demigod was no match for all of them, but Blathnat was. Believing in herself had unlocked her hidden power. The goddess felt a surge of magical energy radiate from her fingers. She raised her hands upward and the castle walls began to shake and move under her power. Every stone became loose, lifting into the air and hovering like a granite cloud over their heads. Blathnat couldn't quite believe her ability, and neither could the men around her. But she pretended to be entirely in control. "I cannot wash you away with a wave like my father might," she called out, "but these stones will crush you on my command." Terrified, the soldiers ran for safety. They escaped to the mountains, never to come back. Blathnat returned the stones into place so the castle remained intact. Curoy's innocent servants still had a home, as of course did her brave young friend the raider who had helped her escape. The goddess thanked Cuchulainn for all his help, but she wasted no time in sailing home to the Isle of Man. With her new powers and especially her new confidence, Blathnat was ready now to rule her people. And that was the story of Blathnat the Jailbreaker. Girls Who Slay Monsters. Great book. Okay, that's it. Till the next one. Bye bye.